Hi, everyone. My name is Question Telka, and I'm the owner of Reconcile Financials, a bookkeeping and accounting firm specializing in nonprofit and real estate investment. I make tutorials to help empower clients and other bookkeeping and accounting professionals. This video today is the third part in a three-part series covering W-9s and 1099s. So today we'll focus on filing your 1099s. We'll talk about what a 1099 is, and then we're also going to discuss how to determine if we need to file a 1099. This won't be an exhaustive list of situations because there seem to be an infinite number that pop up. However, we'll cover some of the most common situations and questions that arise. And then we'll also look at some W-9s that have been filled out and help us determine, based on the classification filled out on the W-9 form, whether a 1099 is needed. The last thing that we'll talk about is how to file the 1099s. There are several different options, and I'm going to go over some electronic filing options. I've created a flowchart to help us determine if we need to file a 1099. But first, let's talk about what it is. It's an informational return that businesses are required to fill out in order to report payments that they have made to contractors for services or to individuals for rent. The IRS uses this form to verify that recipients of these payments are reporting their income and ultimately paying taxes on it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the flow chart. Should I file a 1099? If we take a look at the first question, are you a self employed individual, business, or nonprofit? What this is attempting to determine is, are you making payments through the course of your personal life or business? If you're making payments for a contractor to paint your personal residence, for example, you do not need to send them a 1099. However, if you're doing the same for a business building, for example, then you would need to provide a 1099 if all of the other scenarios for filing a 1099 apply. So let's pretend that they do, and we'll move on to yes. Did you make $600 or more in payments to an individual or business during the calendar year? This is a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So even if your business is run on a fiscal year, it's still calculated on a calendar year. And also, something to keep in mind is that it's on a cash basis. So if you're running reports in your accounting software, you need to make sure that you're running them on a cash basis because it's payments that have actually been made, not payments that have been invoiced for. So if we continue on, the next question asks us, were the payments made for services or rent? So, what this is attempting to determine is, did you make payments for merchandise, for example? In which case, if you're buying goods, then a 1099 does not apply. It is really for services. However, a caveat to that is, if your contractor has sent you an invoice and it has labor as well as parts on it, then you would still have to send a 1099 for that payment, even if part of the payment did include the goods. The next thing to discuss would be rents. So, rent that you pay to a property manager does not have to be 1099 because the property manager will be taking care of this on their end. So if you're making a payment for rent to a property manager, not an individual or small, renter, then you would not need to file a 1099. Also, something that came up recently, so I thought I would include, is that rent for storage does not apply. Another item that would apply would be rent for equipment. So if you are renting equipment, then you would still need to send a 1099 for that. And there is a list on the 1099 instructions of all sorts of exclusions. And if you have a unique situation, I would suggest taking a look at this list as well. So if we say yes and we move on to the next scenario, did you use any of the following to make payments? ACH bank transfer, check, cash, Zelle, Cash App, or personal PayPal or personal Venmo? Then you need to 1099. So basically, any payments that are running through a payment processor, debit card, credit card, business, PayPal, or any other payment processor, they will be sending out the 1099 instead. And so you don't need to. So again, anything ACH, bank transfer, check, cash, Zelle, Cash App, personal Venmo, or PayPal all would require a 1099 to your contractor or whomever you paid rent to. The next question or the next box says to take a look at their W-9, which we're going to do in just a minute. And if they're any of the following, then they would need to receive a 1099. So an individual sole proprietor or single member LLC would receive a 1099. A partnership, trust, or estate, and a limited liability company electing to be taxed as a partnership. So that would also receive a 1099. The one thing to mention as well is that law firms always receive a 1099 regardless of whether or not they are incorporated. So if they happen to be a corporation or an S corp, then you would still send them a 1099. And there are, of course, different types of 1099 forms, such as a 1099 NEC and 1099 MISC. And when you are making payments to a law firm for typical services rendered in the course of business, then you would put it on a 1099 NEC still. If you were making payments or a law firm was paid settlement fees, then you would put it on a 1099 MISC. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look at some examples of W-9s and then determine based on what the W-9s look like, whether or not we need to file a Form 1099, assuming that all of the other situations in this flowchart are yes, then we just need to determine whether or not, based on their W-9, we should send a 1099. In addition to the flowchart that I've created for all of you, I also added an additional resource to help you determine, based on looking at a W-9, whether or not the 1099 is needed. I did this because I found this very confusing myself when I was first starting out before I had any tax experience. And also going from one year to the next, if you're not looking at this throughout the year, then we tend to forget the specific scenarios. So I created this document to just help you be able to refer back to it and answer any questions that come up based on how the W-9 is filled out. So the first one that we'll look at is W-9s that indicate a 1099 is required. And that would be individual sole proprietor, single member LLC, and then partnership, trust and estate, and a limited liability company with classification P for partnership. And then let's go ahead and take a look at W-9s that indicate a 1099 is not required. So the first here would be limited liability company with the tax classification C. So they've elected to be taxed as a corporation. A limited liability company that has elected to be taxed as an S corporation, C corporation, S corporation, and then other would be nonprofits. So based on how box 3 is filled out on the W-9, you can see where a 1099 is required and is not required. Now we'll talk about how to file 1099s. Mail is an option. However, the IRS prefers you e-file, and it is just so much simpler to do so. So there are a few different options for filing: QuickBooks Online, Tax 1099, and Track 1099. First, let's talk about QuickBooks Online. I think QuickBooks Online is a great solution for small business owners who are filing their own 1099s, or if they are working with bookkeepers internally and they're only using QuickBooks for that particular business. I think it's a good option. The reason I'm not so fond of filing 1099s through QuickBooks Online myself and wouldn't necessarily recommend it for bookkeepers and accountants is because once you file, if you need to amend the 1099, you cannot do this through QuickBooks Online electronically. So you have to make the changes and then you have to print it out and mail it. And that's kind of a pain. Don't ask me how I know. So I prefer to use Track 1099 or Tax 1099 for filing all of my 1099s. Now let's talk about tax 1099. I share this option because I know a lot of people personally prefer to use it. I have heard that it tends to slow down as you get closer to the filing deadline, and I did in fact use it 1 year and have that experience. I think that the dashboard is pretty simple and easy to use, so I think this is a great option as well. My personal favorite, however, is Track 1099. The reason I like it so much is because I find it very user friendly, it's affordable, and I can also use it throughout the year to collect W-9s on behalf of multiple clients. Then, when it's time to file the 1099s, I can take the information I've collected and move it into the 1099 module within the software to help prepare the 1099s. You can also connect it to QuickBooks Online and it'll pull information and data from QuickBooks directly. And then when you file, it will send out an email notification to the recipient that their 1099 is ready. If they don't pick it up via the email link, then it gives you the option to send out a 1099 through regular mail. So that is why I prefer Track 1099. It's what I've used for the last several years. And I think there are probably also a lot of other great e-filing options available. I hope this video really helped you understand when you need to file a 1099. Please look in the description for a link to a download, which includes the flowchart as well as the W-9 resource. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more follow-up videos, and I will also provide a link in the description for the 2 prior videos in this series, What is a W-9 and How to Fill Out a W-9. If you have any questions, leave them for me in the comments, and if you are interested in learning about the services that we offer at Reconcile Financials, you can go to my website at reconcilefinancials.com or send an email to info@reconcilefinancials.